Just finished tuning this Mustang Cobra with Holley HP. Next we got this big box Chevy with the blower on it with Holley Sniper. So there'll be videos on both of those cars, so make sure you check those out. First time doing this, I made a post in the community tab in YouTube. Just see people doing these Q&A videos, and they don't take a lot of effort or time, and so close to hitting 15,000 subscribers that, who knows, maybe this video will kind of put me over that hump, which is amazing. I wouldn't have thought in a million years 100 people would want to watch all this nonsense that I do. So thank you everybody for that. So yeah, let's just get right into it. I'm just gonna read these basically in order here. Have you ever done a back-to-back test on methanol engine running intercooler without? Personally, no. However, I have some friends that have done it. We've had some conversations regarding it. On most of the V8 stuff, since generally speaking, most of those guys are running 35, 40 pounds of boost on the high end, it doesn't seem to quite make that much of a difference. Some of like the Pro Charge deals, you'll see they're running 40, 50. That might make a little bit more. But over on the import side of things, the 4 and 6 cylinder cars, when they're running 90, 100, 110 pounds of boost, you have to run them so rich in order to keep them from destroying themselves, that the intercooler keeps everything in check and seems to be very worthwhile to have at that point. So I'd say it's directly related to the boost pressure, but I'm not the one to answer that from experience anyways. When bumping time in, are you just bumping the cells you're running through or the entire map? Ironically, this video here kind of is going to cover that a little bit. There's only so much you can put into all these videos. At the end of the day, this is how I feed my family. But with that being said, I don't generally use flat timing curves, and I let the dyno and or the spark plugs tell me what it wants for a timing map. So usually the curve isn't flat, and then I'm bumping, whether I'm doing it off throttle position or map pressure or whatever, just throw some timing in it, take some timing away, let's see what the dyno graph says, and then build the map according to that. Some timing questions. Boosted 85, where do you normally end up? They're all different. There's no solid answer for that. Do you have an idea when your tuning class will become available? Would you anticipate this year? Sign up for the notifications. And do you think I have a hands-on class with Devin? And do you think you will do a HP tuners class? Yes, the tuning class will be available this year. I'm hoping sooner than later than for the pre-release. Me and Devin were actually discussing both his class in South Carolina and a class here in Maryland, so there's a good chance that will happen, and there's absolutely 0% chance of me doing an HP tuner class. I'm completely new to all this, so probably a dumb question. Everybody was new to it at some point in time, and I still ask dumb questions. Terminator X on my airboat. When I stomp on the gas, should the air-fuel ratio stay the same? Mine are dipping into the 10s for a second, then recovers. Yes, you need to fix that. More often than not, that is in the fuel map, more so than the acceleration enrichment, but you can log both of them and it'll tell you which one it is. Get your fuel map right first and then start messing with the acceleration enrichment. What are your recommendations for somebody to bring something to you for tuning, like common issues? This is long. He has multiple cars, the Wizard's doing his thing. Ultimately, just prepare the car as if you were about to go to the racetrack or drive across the country. If it's something that you can get started and running on your own, it's pretty easy to, tell if all the coolant's gonna fall on the floor or whatever that may be. But I would recommend checking out, I have both a dyno rental kind of checklist video and also a dyno tuning checklist video. I would watch both of those, and my main website actually has both a dyno tuning and a dyno rental checklist on there as well. So that's a good place to start. What is the difference between transferring and learn to the base, or how do you change the cells manually? Also, can you go over gas versus 85 and why you shouldn't turn the option on in the ECU? Oh, he's talking about the fuel type. So when you transfer the learn table to the base, you don't hit all of the cells, so it always either puts big giant holes in the fuel map or big huge mountains in the fuel map. The learn table is a good tool to figure out sort of what's what and where you're at and get a good understanding of trends. But transferring the learn to the base is, one, it's just kind of lazy, and two, it just always makes for a really ugly fuel map. So I don't recommend doing that. As far as the gas versus E85, that's just the scale in which the ECU is going to read in. It doesn't make any fueling corrections. So if you're used to, you know, the like, let's call it 10 to 16 on the gasoline scale, then use gasoline. I don't think anybody uses the E85 scale. There is some cool changes coming in regards to that, but you didn't hear that from me. Do you ever use knock detection equipment? What is your method for dialing in ignition tables without a dyno? Yes, I have. It's over there, I'm too lazy to go and get it. But I have a Knock Monitor Pro unit. It's pretty labor intensive to set up when you're doing the volume of cars that I do. And I do offer it when need be or where I feel it might be advantageous, and I do charge extra for that. What I have noticed is 99 out of 100 times when you offer that for an additional fee, people say no. But I do use it on my own stuff sometimes, like maybe an engine I'm not familiar with or tinkering, playing around. And I guess the second part of that is if you don't have knock detection equipment and you don't have a dyno, then the only other option you really have for tuning, for ignition tuning is reading spark plugs. Can you do a video on PID boost tuning and show the results on the dyno? Yeah, I've had a zillion people ask about that, so that'll probably be on the to-do list. What's your favorite non-alcoholic beverage? Well, that's random. And what's one of the funnest cars you've had on the dyno? Please hold. I basically just only drink water, and when I get bored of that, like some of this like carbonated water, I go through 1,000 bottles of this a month, it feels like. Most fun cars I've had on the dyno. Oh man, that's a tough one. Believe it or not, a lot of times the lower powered stuff can be really fun because you can just murder the thing and you know you're not gonna break it. So there's a lot to learn on the low power stuff that directly applies to the high power stuff without the high price tag associated with it. Have you ever done back-to-back testing on forced induction with E85 and methanol? Once, but it wasn't a true apples to apples. The methanol car at the same boost level actually made a little bit less power, but you can crank things way up with methanol over the ethanol. I think it gets to a point where a lot of guys are still using E85 when they should be using methanol. Obviously not the street cars, but some of the race car stuff. Methanol is pretty cool fuel. I actually like using it. I haven't done a whole lot with it. I'm not super well versed in it, but I would like to do more. What are the shift points for 4L80 in a quarter mile to get you close? It's totally dependent on the power of the car, power band of the car. Where do you usually stop with the stock Metamend, LS stuff, booster power-wise? Depends on the fuel and it depends on the customer. If the customer's got 9 spare engines in his garage, then we'll just turn it up until something tells us that we can't anymore. On pump gas, I usually keep most of my pump gas stuff under like 15 pounds or 500-600 horsepower depending on how efficiently it's working, but it's very customer dependent. Is running 2 O2 sensors better than running 1? I mean, obviously it's a good idea to be able to check bank to bank if possible. If we're talking Holley, your only option to do that though is on a Dominator. The Snipers, the Terminator X, and the HP only have 1 sensor available. And sometimes running 2 sensors can really throw you for a loop because you'd be surprised how often they read drastically different. So then you start really second guessing yourself all of the time. How did you get into tuning? So I actually worked at Tempest Racing before I purchased it. And one day my boss at the time just basically quit coming to work. And I had never tuned anything, I didn't know anything about it. And if I'm being completely honest, I got tired of the customers calling, asking about their cars. And you could tell they were starting to get nervous when weeks had gone by and there was no sort of an update. So I sat in the corner and didn't sleep for a few days, started pushing a bunch of buttons, and this is actually in the chip burning days too, so every time you made a change, you had to pull the computer chip out of the ECU, you had to take it over to the bench, you had to flash it, you had to put it back in. So yeah, that was a mess. How do I make my car fast? Sell it. That should make it move pretty quick. Thoughts on meth injection for guys who can't get a hold of E85? I used to absolutely despise meth injection, but if you do it right and you don't half-ass it, it actually works pretty damn good. There's always that possibility of, you know, it clogging up or not working or not coming on. And I don't necessarily like the idea of using it as a replacement for race fuel, but if you don't really hammer on it, it actually works pretty good. Just just like everything else, it really comes down to the install. Have you tried tuning every ignition cell to max torque? Maybe some NA autocross? So our dyno is able to hold the car at any given RPM, any given load point. So I've done a lot of experimenting with that. And you'd be surprised, especially like part throttle and stuff, how much of a difference it doesn't make. You can swing the timing 10, 15 degrees and the difference is pretty minimal. The problem with trying to dial in every single cell full throttle is that when you're holding the car like that, it gets really, really hot, really, really fast. So doing the sweep runs is much more practical. In which case, you really do hit every cell that way. And yeah, some cars end up with really funky timing curves. So when you look at some of these maps and it just has 30 degrees everywhere, there's usually, leaving something. You're either over-timed in some places and under-timed in others, or vice versa. Most cars just don't seem to like to be perfectly flat. Pineapple on your pizza or nah? I'll eat it. I'll eat just about anything. My daughter, she's 4. She orders her pizza with every topping and then just eats the toppings and doesn't eat the pizza. But her go-to right now is pineapple. We actually just had that last night. So can you Motech any car if you have someone make you firmware for it? You can basically put any ECU into any car as long as it will support your cam and crank sensors, the amount of cylinders you have, and the firing order you're running. So I guess the answer to that is yes. How do I get a hold of you to tune my car? Oh, there's a reply. Somebody probably saying I'm impossible to get a hold of. No, that's actually the right answer. Email me. I am at the point where I'm getting 50, 100 phone calls a day, so I can't really answer the phone anymore, especially since most of it is like tech support type stuff. I don't make any money sitting on the phone all day. The other week, I took off Friday, so between Thursday and Monday, I had like 185 missed phone calls. If you figure 10 minutes per phone call, that's basically like a 40-hour work week, so that's just not obtainable. So yeah, send me an email. I don't always respond immediately. I usually sit down and answer 50, 100 emails at a time. And if a week or something goes by and you haven't heard from me, absolutely send me another email. You kind of got to stay on top of me a little bit. I'm completely overwhelmed at times, and scheduling the tuning is far harder for me than actually doing the tuning. And like cars like this has been here 3 times. The last video I posted, that car was here twice. So that just amplifies the amount of time and the hassle of scheduling everything times like a million. So yeah, so don't get frustrated with me. I just understand that I have significantly more people contacting me about tuning than I could ever do. So I'm still kind of trying to navigate that. This sort of explosion of people wanting me to tune their cars is pretty new, and I'm still trying to navigate the best ways of going about it. I'm sure nobody's gonna watch this video in the grand scheme of things, so I'm not gonna put a bunch of effort and time into editing it. But like I said, getting pretty close to that 15,000 subscriber mark, which is awesome. So if you haven't subscribed yet and you wanna help me out, that would be awesome. And if you want your questions answered, keep an eye on that community tab, and as long as you guys keep asking questions, I'll keep doing these videos, assuming it's not a total flop. All right, that's enough for today. See you next time.